What would you do if your child was unfairly accused? Just because of their skin color? Today's story will shake your heart and remind you why kindness and humility matter more than pride. Stay till the end. Trust me, you'll want to see the look on her face when the truth comes out. And hey, if you believe in fairness and humanity, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Kindness Tales Live, where every story restores your faith in people. It was a quiet Saturday morning in Willowbrook, a small suburban town known for its calm streets and friendly faces, or so everyone liked to believe. 17-year-old Malik Johnson had come to the local grocery store to buy ingredients for his mother's birthday cake. His smile was easy, his hoodie was gray, and his earbuds played soft jazz as he browsed the aisles. To him, it was just another ordinary errand. But to someone else in that store, it was something else entirely. Standing at the end of the aisle was Catherine Mills, a middle-aged woman in a crisp white jacket, clutching her purse tightly as if it were made of glass. Her eyes followed Malik as he compared prices on cake mix. She whispered to another shopper, "Do you see that boy? He's been lingering around too long, probably waiting to steal something." The other woman frowned but said nothing. Catherine's voice rose slightly, her tone filled with suspicion disguised as concern. Malik, oblivious to her glares, hummed softly as he grabbed flour and sugar. When he reached into his pocket for his phone, Catherine gasped and stepped back. "That's it, I'm calling the police," she snapped, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Within minutes, the store's calm atmosphere turned tense. Malik froze as a store clerk whispered, "Don't worry, kid. Just stay calm." But how could he? All he'd done was shop. Still, the sight of flashing lights outside made his heart pound. Officer Daniels entered, his posture stiff, hand resting on his belt. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem?" he asked. Catherine pointed dramatically at Malik. "That boy's been acting suspicious. He's stuffing things into his bag. I saw it." The officer turned toward Malik. "Son, I'm going to need you to step aside and open your bag." Malik swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he unzipped his backpack. Inside were only groceries, a recipe note, and a small birthday card. "It's for my mom," he said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was heavy. Daniels looked from Malik to Catherine, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "it looks like he didn't take anything." Catherine frowned. "Check again. People like him—" She stopped herself, but the words hung in the air like poison. The shoppers nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. A young mother pulled her daughter closer. Malik's chest tightened. He could feel everyone's eyes burning into him. "You called the cops on me because of how I look?" he asked softly. "I was just trying to buy cake mix." Before anyone could respond, another voice echoed from the entrance, calm, authoritative, and unmistakably familiar. "Is there a problem here?" The officer turned. Standing at the door was a tall black man in a dark suit, his badge glinting on his belt. "Chief Johnson," Daniel said quickly, stepping aside. Catherine blinked, her face paling. "Chief?" she stammered. The man's eyes landed on Malik, his son. For a moment, everything froze. Malik's heart leapt. "Dad?" he breathed. Chief Johnson's gaze hardened as he turned to Catherine. "You called the police on my son?" His voice was calm, but each word carried weight. "For buying groceries?" Catherine's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The entire store was silent. The chief sighed, then placed a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder. "Son, let's go home. We'll handle this properly." He looked back at Catherine and said quietly, "Ma'am, sometimes the real crime isn't what's stolen, it's what's assumed." And with that, they walked out together, father and son, side by side. But little did anyone know, this was only the beginning of a lesson Catherine Mills would never forget. The automatic doors slid shut behind them, but the heavy silence between father and son followed them out into the parking lot. Malik's hands were still trembling as he gripped the grocery bag. His father's tall frame moved beside him, steady and composed, though his eyes betrayed a storm he was working hard to contain. "Dad?" Malik started, his voice shaky. "I didn't do anything wrong. She just looked at me like I was dangerous." Chief Johnson unlocked the car and took a deep breath before answering. "I know, son. You don't have to explain." He looked at Malik, his face softening. "Unfortunately, sometimes people see what they expect, not what's real." Malik bit his lip. "It's not fair." "No, His father agreed quietly. It isn't, but how we respond, that's where our strength lies. As they drove home, Malik stared out the window. The town that once felt safe now seemed smaller, colder. His father's phone buzzed nonstop, messages, calls, notifications. The incident had already spread among local officers. Even the grocery clerk had posted something online. A woman called the cops on a kid for shopping. Turns out his dad's the FBI chief. By the time they reached home, Malik's mom, Vanessa, was waiting at the door. What happened? She asked immediately, worry etched on her face. Malik told her everything, from the moment Catherine accused him to the second his dad walked in. She listened quietly, holding his hand the entire time. When he finished, she sighed deeply. Baby, I'm so sorry. No one should ever make you feel that way. Chief Johnson stepped forward. I'm handling it, he said firmly, but not with anger, with truth. Across town, Catherine Mills sat alone in her pristine living room, replaying the moment over and over. Her chest felt tight, her stomach twisted with unease. She had called the police on a child, not because he'd done anything, but because she'd assumed he would. Her husband, Greg, came home to find her staring blankly at the evening news. You okay? He asked cautiously. She shook her head. Greg, I think I made a mistake. He frowned. What do you mean? Her voice cracked. That boy at the store, he wasn't stealing. He was the FBI chief's son. Greg blinked. The Chief Johnson? You're kidding. Catherine swallowed hard. No, and he was so calm, so disappointed. Not angry, just disappointed. She buried her face in her hands. What have I done? Greg sighed. Maybe it's time you faced it. You've been jumpy ever since those news stories. You see danger where there isn't any. I know, she whispered. But this time I hurt someone. A kid. That night she couldn't sleep. The more she thought about Malik's eyes, the confusion, the quiet hurt, the heavier the guilt became. Finally, around midnight, she picked up her phone and typed out a message she never thought she'd write. To Chief Johnson, I owe you and your son an apology. If you're willing, I'd like to say it in person. She hovered over the send button for nearly a minute before pressing it. The next morning, at FBI headquarters, Chief Johnson opened his email between meetings. When he saw her message, he leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. She wants to apologize, he murmured. His assistant, Agent Reyes, looked up. You gonna take it? He nodded slowly. Yes, but not for me, for Malik. She needs to understand what her fear cost him. Later that day, he called home. Son, how about we take a drive this evening? Someone wants to talk to us. Malik frowned. Who? Mrs. Mills. Malik hesitated. Dad, I don't want to see her. I understand, Johnson said gently. But sometimes forgiveness isn't for them. It's for us, to let go of what we didn't deserve. Malik exhaled slowly. Okay, for you, I'll come. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Johnsons pulled into a quiet park. Catherine was already there, clutching a small envelope in her hand. When she saw them, she stood, her eyes red from crying. I'm so sorry, she began, her voice trembling. What I did was wrong. I didn't see your son. I saw my own fear. Chief Johnson nodded. That's a start. But understanding that fear doesn't excuse it, it challenges it. Malik looked at her, eyes steady. I just wanted to buy a cake mix, he said softly. You made me feel like a criminal. Catherine's tears spilled. I know, and I'll never forgive myself for that. Johnson placed a hand on her shoulder. Then don't waste the lesson. Use it. As the wind carried the last light of day, silence settled, not of anger, but of something deeper. Maybe, just maybe, the first step toward change. Catherine woke up early the next morning, her eyes swollen from a sleepless night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Malik's expression. That mix of fear and disappointment that no child should ever have to show. Her heart ached with guilt. She had apologized, yes, but somehow it didn't feel like enough. Words were cheap. Change, she realized, would have to come through action. She walked into her kitchen, poured a cup of coffee, and stared at her reflection in the window. Who have I become? She whispered. Someone afraid of people who've never done me harm? The truth stung, but she didn't turn away from it. Instead, she sat at her table and began writing. It wasn't an apology letter this time, and it was a plan to make things right. Later that day, Catherine made a call to the local community center. "Hi, this is Catherine Mills," she began nervously. "I'd like to organize a neighborhood discussion about bias, about understanding each other better." The woman on the other end paused, then said warmly, "That's brave of you, Catherine. We've been trying to start something like that for months." When Catherine hung up, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, and purpose. Meanwhile, across town, Malik was sitting in his room, sketching absent-mindedly in his notebook. He was still processing what had happened. The apology had surprised him, but part of him remained unsure if it was real or just guilt. His father knocked gently and stepped in. "You okay, son?" Malik shrugged. "I guess. I'm still thinking about her." "Why would she change now?" Chief Johnson sat beside him. "People don't change overnight, but sometimes when they're confronted with the truth, it plants a seed. And that seed grows if they water it." Malik closed his notebook. "You really think she'll change?" "I think," Johnson said, smiling faintly, "that you already started that change." A week later, Catherine's event at the community center took shape. She called it One Town, One Heart. She spent days making flyers, posting online, and reaching out to neighbors, even those who had witnessed the incident. The day of the event, the center buzzed with quiet anticipation. Rows of chairs filled up slowly. Catherine stood at the front, clutching her notes, her heart pounding. She had expected a handful of people, but over 50 had shown up, including a few familiar faces from the grocery store. And then, to her surprise, she saw them, Chief Johnson and Malik, walking through the doors. The crowd murmured. Catherine's throat tightened. "Thank you for coming," she began shakily. "A week ago I made a terrible mistake. I saw danger where there was none. I judged someone by what I thought I knew instead of who they were. I humiliated a young man for doing nothing more than shopping for his mom's birthday." The room was silent. Catherine took a deep breath. "I can't undo what I did, but I can start by acknowledging the harm and by learning." She gestured toward the microphone beside her. "I asked Chief Johnson if he'd be willing to speak today, to help us understand what prejudice looks like through his eyes." Johnson stepped forward, his voice calm but powerful. "When I walked into that store, I wasn't the FBI chief. I was just a father seeing his son accused for existing. That's a fear too many parents live with, and it shouldn't be this way." Malik sat quietly in the front row, watching his dad's words ripple through the room. For the first time since that day, he felt something shift. Not forgiveness yet, but possibility. After the speech, Catherine approached him. "Malik," she said softly, "I started this because of you. I didn't realize how blind I was until that moment. I hope this," she gestured to the crowd, "is the first step." Malik looked at her, studying her trembling hands. "You're trying," he said after a pause. "That means something." Catherine exhaled, her eyes brimming. "Thank you. That's more grace than I deserve." As people mingled afterward, strangers hugged, conversations bloomed, and a sense of unity filled the air. For the first time in a long time, Willowbrook felt like a community again, not just a collection of houses. Standing near the doorway, Chief Johnson placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. "You see, son, change doesn't start with anger. It starts with courage, sometimes from the unlikeliest hearts." Malik nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe people can surprise you, huh?" His father smiled back. "Sometimes the ones who make the biggest mistakes are the ones who end up teaching the biggest lessons." A week after the One Town, One Heart event, the energy in Willowbrook felt different. For the first time in years, neighbors who barely exchanged waves were stopping to talk. People were sharing stories, asking questions, listening. What had begun as one woman's guilt was slowly turning into a town's awakening. At the community center, a colorful poster hung near the entrance. "Unity starts with understanding." Beneath it was a photo from the event. Catherine shaking hands with Chief Johnson, Malik smiling faintly beside them. That single image had gone viral locally, sparking headlines like "FBI Chief's Son Inspires Small Town to Confront Bias." But for Malik, the attention was overwhelming. His classmates whispered about it. Teachers looked at him differently, and reporters even showed up outside his school. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. He just wanted to be himself. That afternoon, he sat under the oak tree behind the school, sketching quietly. His art teacher, Ms. Keller, approached. "Malik," she said gently, "the mayor called the school. They're hosting a Community Appreciation Day next week. They want you and your father to attend. And speak." Malik's pencil froze mid-line. "Speak, me?" She nodded. "You've already inspired so many. Maybe this is your chance to tell your side." He hesitated. "I'm not good with speeches." Ms. Keller smiled. "You don't need to be. Just be honest. That's what people need." At home that evening, Malik told his parents about the invitation. His mom's face lit up with pride, but his dad looked thoughtful. "It's your choice, son," Chief Johnson said. "But if you do it, speak your truth, not what they expect to hear." Malik nodded slowly. "You got my truth." That night he stayed up late writing. He didn't know how to sound powerful or political, but he knew how he felt, scared, hurt, but also stronger. Stronger because he'd faced hate and hadn't let it change who he was. When the day finally arrived, the town square was filled with people, families, students, police officers, even local officials. On the stage stood Catherine, looking nervous but hopeful. She had helped organize the event, and every time her eyes met Malik's, she offered a small, grateful smile. The mayor introduced the speakers, ending with, "And finally, a young man who reminded us all that compassion is the truest form of courage, Malik Johnson." Applause echoed. Malik stepped up to the microphone, heart pounding. He glanced at the crowd. Hundreds of faces, some familiar, some not.
And then he began. "I never thought buying a cake mix would change my life," he said, his voice trembling at first.
A ripple of soft laughter eased the tension. But it did. Because that day I learned how quickly people can judge you, and how powerful forgiveness can be when you choose to give it anyway. He paused, looking at Catherine in the front row. "Mrs. Mills hurt me that day, but she also taught me something, that change can start with a mistake. What matters is what you do next." The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. "I don't want people to see this as a story about hate," Malik continued. "I want them to see it as a story about learning, about choosing empathy over fear." He looked at his father, who gave a proud nod. "Because no matter who you are or what you've done, it's never too late to do better." The applause that followed was thunderous. People stood, clapping and cheering. Catherine wiped tears from her eyes. Chief Johnson wrapped an arm around his son, whispering, "You spoke from your heart? That's all that matters." Later, as the crowd dispersed, Catherine approached Malik quietly. "You were incredible," she said softly. "You gave me hope that I can keep changing." Malik smiled faintly. "Then keep doing it. Don't stop with one event. Keep listening." She nodded, eyes shining. "I will." Just then, a local journalist approached, asking to take a photo. Catherine hesitated, but Malik said, "Sure, let's show them what growth looks like." The picture captured that exact moment. Two people once divided by fear, now standing side by side. That image, too, would spread across the internet with one caption: "Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's power." That evening, as the Johnson family sat together watching the coverage, Malik leaned back with a quiet smile. "You know," he said, "maybe this whole mess was meant to happen. Maybe it's how the town needed to wake up." His dad nodded. "Sometimes, son, the hardest stories to live are the ones that teach the most people." His mom smiled warmly. "And you taught them with grace." Malik chuckled softly. "Guess I learned from the best." Months passed since the day Malik stood on that stage, his words echoing through the hearts of everyone who had gathered. The story of the Willowbrook forgiveness event spread beyond their small town. It appeared on local news channels, then regional stations, and eventually national headlines. People everywhere were moved by how a young black teen and a remorseful woman turned pain into purpose. Emails and letters poured in, from teachers, parents, even police departments across the country. Some shared their own experiences with bias. Others thanked Malik for his courage. One message read, "Your story gave me hope that my community can change too." For Malik, the sudden spotlight felt surreal. He wasn't trying to be famous, he was just trying to heal. Yet somehow his voice had reached places he'd never imagined. His father, proud but protective, reminded him often, "Use your platform wisely, son. Let it inspire, not divide. And Malik did. He began volunteering at youth workshops, speaking about empathy, equality, and courage. With his dad's guidance, he helped create a school program called Walk in My Shoes, where students shared personal stories and learned to see the world through each other's eyes. The program quickly spread to neighboring districts. Meanwhile, Catherine Mills continued her journey of atonement. She started attending diversity seminars, reading books she once ignored, and even mentoring younger parents who struggled with unconscious bias. She wasn't perfect. She still caught herself unlearning habits she didn't know she had, but she was determined to never let fear rule her again. One sunny afternoon, Catherine stood outside the same grocery store where it had all begun. She was volunteering for a food drive organized by the community center. People greeted her warmly now. Some still remembered that incident, but instead of judgment, there was respect, because she had faced her mistake and changed. She smiled as she handed a donation box to a familiar face. "Hey there, Malik," she said. Malik grinned. "Didn't expect to see you here." She chuckled softly. "You inspired me more than you'll ever know. This time I'm not calling the cops, and I'm calling for compassion." They both laughed, and for the first time it felt easy, natural. No tension, no guilt. Just two people sharing the same purpose. A few weeks later, Chief Johnson was invited to a national leadership summit in Washington, D.C., the theme, Building Trust Through Empathy. When he stepped on stage, the audience applauded. But before he began his keynote, he invited someone unexpected to join him, his son. Malik walked out, nervous but smiling. The spotlight felt warm on his face. "I used to think my voice didn't matter," he began, "that no one would listen. But I learned something. Kindness doesn't need volume, it needs truth." He paused, looking at the crowd. Leaders, officers, educators, parents. What happened to me could have ended with bitterness. But instead it began a conversation, one that keeps growing, one community at a time. Chief Johnson placed a hand on his shoulder. "We can't erase prejudice overnight," he said, "but we can choose to confront it with courage, not hatred." My son taught me that. The audience rose in applause, not just for their titles, but for their humanity. Back in Willowbrook, the town installed a new mural outside the community center. Bright, colorful, and filled with faces of all ages and backgrounds. In the center was a quote from Malik's speech, "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's how we begin again." Catherine helped paint the mural. So did Malik. They worked side by side, smiling as children dipped their brushes into bright colors, adding their own touches of hope. When they finished, Catherine looked at the mural and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Malik smiled. "Thank you for proving people can change." As the sun dipped behind the trees, the mural glowed in the orange light, a symbol of everything they'd learned. From pain had come understanding. From misunderstanding, unity. Later that evening, Malik posted a photo of the mural on social media with the caption, "What started as hate turned into hope." Never underestimate the power of one moment, or one act of kindness. Within hours, it was shared thousands of times, carrying his message far beyond their small town. Chief Johnson read the post and smiled. "You've started something, son. Something that's going to outlast all of us." Malik looked at him and said softly, "Then let's keep it going." And they did, one story, one act, one person at a time.